Senator White.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I very much appreciate the testimony of the two witnesses, but I sort of come to expect that of the National Academy of Sciences, both in terms of your testimony and your report. And indeed, when a problem arose at the Centers for Disease Control that might have been misunderstood by the public, I turned to my good friend Sam Thier and asked that the Institutes of Medicine investigate the problem so there couldn't be any political connotations to it. And the Institutes of Medicine just did an outstanding job. To show you what foresight is all about, you indicated that various members of the administration might have been somewhat short-sighted. I point to this book that was put out. This is the report that you gentlemen put out. And there's a sentence in here I think I should read, because it came forth before the '88 budget was released. These funds must be newly appropriated, not money taken from other research, because the nation's general health efforts, as well as those directed against HIV, need continuing progress in basic biomedical science on a broad front. So these fellows aren't being sort of attuned to the politics of the times. They made this very clear in their report before the budget came out. Now, I would like to, if I might, just get to the two items, the $1 billion for research that you recommend, the $1 billion for education. If we continue at the requested level for '88 by the administration, we would be roughly in that ballpark of the $1 billion. In other words, there's $344 million requested for fiscal year '88. And project that out, in other words, for a 3-year period, we'd be within that $1 billion ballpark. Now, is that, I mean, I gather, I'm now talking about research, not education. I'm going to get to that in a minute, because we have zero there. But in other words, that figure of $1 billion, do you consider that to be a sound figure as to what we should be seeking the period of time '88 to '90?
We were actually talking about that as a yearly figure, not as an aggregate.
As a yearly figure?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, all right. So we're actually talking about $3 billion by the year 1990 then?
Well, escalating up to that. And no research program can jump from $200 million to $1 billion in a year without gross inefficiencies. So we saw the country developing its programs in a measured way, roughly doubling its efforts yearly. And that would bring us to about $1 billion.
Now, the reason why I'm especially concerned about this figure is that, I'll tell a little secret out of school here, and I hope I don't get anybody in trouble, but for the past several years, past 2 years at least, I have met unofficially with various and sundry persons, both within NIH and those working with NIH, to ask the question as to what was actually needed in terms of research dollars by the NIH. And whatever that figure is, I've always come up with it in the appropriations process, regardless of what the administration budget was. Because we all know, no great secret around here, there has been no HHS budget, in other words, devised by the doctors and the scientists at NIH, done at OMB. And I'll tell you, when I asked OMB if they had a doctor over there that did this, they said absolutely not. Or a scientist. They don't have anybody over there that knows anything in the area that, of your expertise. But they're the ones that devise the budget. What I'm worried about, in other words, is I think it's terribly important that we be able to responsibly digest whatever monies Senator Kennedy, myself, others are going to fight for here in terms of AIDS research. And if indeed we've been falling short, and I'm saying within the last 2 years, not before that, because I think there's a huge shortfall there, I would certainly hope that the National Academy would work with us, in addition to those that I've had to work with surreptitiously in getting the straight information on that. I just don't think, what I'm saying is I don't want us to fall into the Pentagon syndrome of just throwing money out there and seeing money wasted, because then the credibility of the scientific community will be in danger.
Senator, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that we were making a projection of what we thought would be needed. But I think the yearly appropriation process has to look at what it is we can really do and what monies can really be used. It's my impression that more money could be used in the 1988 budget than is there.
Okay.
Whether that should project, how that should project in 89 and 90 and beyond that, we made a guess at, but I think we have to take a look at that guess each year and see where we are and see what's coming along. If, for instance, there are major breakthroughs on either the vaccine or drug front, then the picture changes enormously. On the other hand, if many of the things that look promising today turn out not to be as promising as we hope, we may say, well, we've got to redouble our efforts. It'll also depend very much on how effective we are with the educational program. If we could truly prevent the spread of this virus within the population by educational activities, then we might see a different level of necessity in the development of vaccines and drugs. On the other hand, I think most of us suspect that as hard as we try at education and public health measures, they are likely to be only partially effective, leaving a big part that will have to be dealt with by the traditional methods of dealing with infectious disease.
Well, that's what I want now to get to Dr. Wolf's side of this thing. And there is no $1 billion or anywhere near it. There's nothing, almost nothing, a few $1 million, I'm sure. I mean, this is an educational process, but I think that's infinitesimal. I beg your pardon. Staff indicates to me $120 million is currently projected for education. That's far short of the $1 billion that you recommend. Would you like to address that?
Yes. Again, I would like to emphasize that the $1 billion is not just for public education, but it's also for other public health measures to make sure that there are adequate facilities available for testing and for counseling, to make sure that there are adequate detoxification facilities available for people. We do believe, however, that a massive public education effort, which would include not just sex education in the school, not just TV advertisement, but to reach the groups at risk and the population at all, will cost considerably more than is presently being spent, and in toto by 1990 should reach $1 billion. If I may add one thing,
Please.
Senator,
Please.
in addition to what my colleague has said, and all morning we've talked about research, one of the things that is going to cost a great deal of money, and we're going to have to come to grips with in this country, in the last number of years, we've done nothing about our physical plants and our instrumentation. And our laboratories in this country, in many places, are too old, they're antiquated, they're inefficient, and much of our instrumentation has, in fact, is outdated. And in order to do research in retroviruses, you need, obviously, certain kinds of specialized facilities. But in order to stay competitive scientifically with the rest of the world, I think somewhere I would hope that your committee, Mr. Chairman, would begin to deal with the issue that through the years we've neglected physical facilities, we've neglected instrumentation.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I can't tell you how delighted I was to have Senator Kennedy provide the opportunity for these hearings and then to have the expertise and the eloquence of those of you that are testifying come to the attention of the American public. Because you're entirely right, whether it's research, whether it's the infrastructure, the facilities, et cetera. This nation has absolutely neglected this to the point where we've got a tough row to hoe. I can only, number one, assure you that in the appropriations process, which I have some say over, I will ask all of you to testify again. But isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing how in this nation how we say to each other as individuals, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. We say that's said 1 million times a day across this country from individual to individual. But do we say it nationally as a matter of priority? No. No. We don't have anything as a nation if we don't have our health. But we're not willing to go ahead and make that true insofar as our spending priorities.
There is perhaps one other piece to this puzzle that might be worth putting on the table, and that is that even the funds that are today appropriated, if you look back at where those funds came from, a lot of them were taken from other programs. Yeah. So the business of taking from other research programs to develop the AIDS budget has been going on for a while, and one of the aspects of the $1 billion that we recommended were to return those funds, partly because of the problems of infrastructure and partly just the problems of the progress in the various areas of research in the country.
Well, I concur with you. Granted, our job on appropriations has been incomplete. We've tried mightily hard to stem what has been just large, massive onslaughts, if you will, by the administration into this area. Indeed, it is one of the major reasons why, insofar as my own party is concerned, I'm the turd in the punch bowl. But I think that we've done as well as can be expected, and now hopefully we'll be able to move on to a more positive element. The matter of education that Dr. Wolf refers to, the importance of that, you can disagree if you will, but I think you would probably concur. We can spend, for example, in the area of drugs. Everybody wants to have a war on drugs, and they want the U.S. militia, the National Guard called out, and the Army, get more helicopters, use the Air Force, bolster up immigration. My God, we go on and on and on. If you would take that money and put it into the education, because there's only one way to stop. You'll never stop that stuff coming into this country. What you've got to stop is the use. And if you would educate our children from age 2 years of age on that it'll kill you, that will stop the problem. Nothing else will. And the same holds true as to what you're recommending here insofar as any effective response to AIDS while the research goes on, I think.